Our next cast member is James Meddock, Bones. James Bones Meddock. Again, I'm actually not sure where his nickname comes from, but whatever. James is unique in the cast in that he is the only other Chapman Theater graduate. He's no '07, a Chapman Theater graduate who is focusing on voiceover. As well as I am. So the both of us are both trying to get into the voiceover industry. So he is the other one. You know, I don't think I can think of anybody else from our school, at least from the years that we were there, that has made the decision to focus on this side of the industry that we have. James has one other distinction that he shares with Tim Stamfer, which is it is not the first time I have directed James or Tim. The both of them were in Bone, my big senior project that I mentioned in the first commentary. He was in Bone. He was there are these monsters in the Bone universe. They're called rat creatures, and they were kind of these they're kind of the invading army, if you will, the bad guy invading army of the story, but they're not particularly smart characters. All the rat creatures are all pretty stupid, all things considered. In fact, the famous saying is "stupid, stupid rat creatures," which I did get to say. That's from Bone. I love that line. That's one of the famous lines from Bone. But particularly the stupid, stupid rat creatures who that line gets said to are in fact these two rat creatures, one of whom is one that really wants to be a monster and kind of focuses on behaving as a monster behaves, and then the other one doesn't. The other one's kind of interested in daintier things and particularly has a fondness for quiche. And so the monster who wants to be a monster is always getting on the other monster's case about like, you know, monsters do not eat flaky egg pastry, you know, things like that. And the rat creatures all had this kind of deep, gravelly sort of voice, kind of in this realm. So all the guys in the Bone cast ended up doing, I think, a rat creature at some point or another. At least almost everybody ended up doing a rat creature at some point. So that was a voice choice that we all had agreed upon for Bone. And but there were a couple, but those two stupid rat creatures who are never named were big enough roles that they were a couple of actors' main roles. And James was the rat creature who was interested in being a monster. So he was the one who was always getting mad at the other rat creature. And that was his main role in Bone. So interestingly enough, between that character and the judge, I guess I have a fondness for giving James these roles where he does these deep, gravelly voices, which is not his real voice at all. But he does it so well, though. So I mean, there it is. With the judge, like I said, it's not really his real voice. The officer he does early on, just the small role, that's closer to his real voice. His real voice may be a little bit more laid back than that, but yeah, he plays the judge, and the judge is a really tough character to describe to another actor, if you think about it. I mean, the judge is a very important character in Ace Attorney canon. He's one of the most important. In fact, you could argue that the craziness of at least the legal system in the Ace Attorney world has a lot to do with the fact that the judge is such a twit. The judge is such a manipulatable, unable to focus on things, kind of goofball. And so because of that, the prosecutors find him very manipulatable, and even Phoenix is capable of manipulating him on certain occasions, and sometimes he's totally elsewhere. The judge is a weird character, and so in that respect, he's got kind of it's kind of weird to put somebody in the position of having to play that character. So how do you describe to another actor, okay, you're kind of the authority here, but you're going to be really elsewhere in terms of your mental state? It's a tricky thing, but I knew James could do it. James is one of the most unpredictable actors I know. One of his strongest points is that he's got such a off-kilter sensibility to him, and so he's capable of coming up with these great sideways views of a character. And it helps that I gave the role of the judge to somebody like James, who is focusing on voiceover, because the voice is such a created voice, so that he was able to work almost exclusively in that voice. He, by the way, in terms of technically speaking, the voice for the judge, he went about as low as he possibly could, low and gravelly, and played the age about as low as he could. But then I pitched him down even lower on Blaze Media Pro so that he sounded really old and really like the way he's supposed to look. But when you pitch somebody down, it slows down their speech, kind of in the same way that when you pitch somebody really, really up in the Alvin the Chipmunk style, it speeds up their speech. So when I pitched him down, it did slow down the way he talked, and then on Power Director, I could take dialogue and I could speed it up and slow it down very nicely without actually changing the pitch. So I was able to pitch him down in Blaze Media Pro and then speed him back up in Power Director so that it was back to a normal speaking speed but still at the low pitch. So that was the illusion. That's the illusion of how the judge's voice came to be. As far as his performance goes, it was one of those things where I just said to I just had James play the age and the authority of the character in certain cases, and then just let him, when we noticed the character kind of going off the rails in regards to what he was and was not noticing, we just played around with it. So we just kind of went back and forth between, okay, how much is he actually, present mentally along with, on the same page as everybody else in the courtroom, and how much is he somewhere else entirely? How much is he catching? How much is he not catching? And so we kind of played around with that so that he came up with some of these great, there are some great, hilarious lines from the judge that are in a way, very odd lines. They remind me a lot, actually, of like in Futurama, Fry, who's it's a hilarious performance from Billy West. But one of the things about Fry is they have a tendency to give Fry all these weird lines that are really funny, but from like a grammatical way, in this kind of, so there are weird lines, and if you listen to the Futurama commentaries, they'll talk about their gratitude towards Billy West for being able to comprehend the nature of the joke and to understand why it's funny. So, like, for instance, when at one point somebody says to Fry, like, have you heard of these these monks? And Fry says, I've not heard of them. And that's a very odd line if you think about it. How do you describe that to an actor who's not going to get that grammatical joke? You have to work that one a little bit to figure it out. So and that's the great credit to Billy West on Futurama. James was able to do basically the exact same thing with various judge lines that are very weird, and where is his mind when he's doing these lines? Things like boysenberry for the boyfriend and things like that he ended up making so funny because he was able to get that this guy is a little bit on planet Mars as far as everybody else is concerned. So he did a fantastic job just getting the weirdness of the role. And then even, when there was a serious element to the judge, particularly by the end, because, Damon Gant and the judge are old friends, and that part he played really nicely. He ended up, doing a really fine job of the heavy sigh, the regret that he had that this man who was once a great light of law enforcement no longer is. He is a corrupt individual, and I thought he nailed that one really nice dramatic scene for the judge. He nailed that one. That was a great line. We actually did do that in retake, but when he did it in the retake, it was absolutely beautiful, and that was the one I used. It was just right, really. And so so there was a balance there, and it was a role that had a lot to it, and he went to it with gusto. It was a rough voice. There's no question. It was a rough voice for James to do, especially when the character would scream. Especially when a lot of those order, and he gets really order. He blew out his voice a few times, a couple. Not completely, but it was. They were rough on him, and he had some coat throat tea that he used a lot that helped him through that. So I think he leaned on it out of sheer necessity to help him through some of the part with the judge. But he did it. He got it great. I mean, he's like me. He wants to be into voiceover, so he better be able to do a role like this and be able to scream as a character as down into his throat as this one was. There's no question that it was a rough one, but he handled it just marvelously. So I have great personal and professional respect for James Meddock. We're both, trying to get into the voiceover industry to some degree. We're both seeking out representation and things like that. I think I'm a little bit far along on the creation of my demo, at least last time I checked, but he's getting his demo done. I actually have, I will owe James a great deal for the rest of my life by virtue of him introducing me to Voice Tracks West, which is where I did the more recent redo of my demo and where I'll be doing my next redo as well. Because at Voice Tracks, that's where he's been doing a lot of his training in voiceover, and we actually ended up both in the process while I was still working on Phoenix Wright. We both ended up signing up separately without the foreknowledge of the other being involved for this animation intensive weekend, and we were both ended up being in the class, and it was serendipity in that respect. That was fun. We just ended up there on the same weekend. And I also, by virtue of getting involved with Voice Tracks West, took a commercial voiceover class there because my commercial voiceover foo was weak and it needed some assistance. But that's I will always be grateful to James for getting selling Voice Tracks West to me, because that was really great of him. And so thank you so much, James. You are gonna kick ass in the voiceover industry. If I can make it, and I intend to make it, if I can make it, you can. No doubt about it. We're both gonna get into this voiceover industry, and we're gonna kick some ass, man.